Lucas. So for me, a lot of it is about observation, right? And getting a good snapshot of how that individual is communicating now. So for example, in our clinic, when we do AAC evals, we try as much as possible to do them at least in 2 visits, right? Where one is in the community, where we get to go to their school, which is harder and harder, by the way, or at home, or wherever they live, work, and play. And that is such a powerful thing, because it gives me the opportunity to see what typical communication, more or less, I mean, nobody's communicating in a typical way when a bunch of, when a professor and a bunch of grad students are there observing, but it's certainly more typical than what I would see when they come to the clinic. So I get to see how they're communicating in their environments. I get to see how their typical interaction partners are communicating with them. I get to see the lay of the land of the physical environment. What are the little things that are going on there that we can exploit and build on as we, craft a path forward for them? And what are some of the constraints, that they face? So I think a big part for me is observational assessment. And one thing, Lucas, that I'm really big on is observing with a purpose in mind. So a lot of times, people will say, okay, I'm going to go into the classroom. That's great. There's no place I'd rather be. But what's your goal? What are you looking for? Right? Don't tell me that I'm just going to go in and see how he's communicating, because all that will do is give you very general awareness level, amorphous bits of information. And what we need is data. Right? So I need to take that as an opportunity to collect very specific kinds of data. So it depends on the level of communicator and how they're communicating now, right? But for a beginning communicator, and that's mostly what, these conversations are about, I'm looking for a couple of key things. I'm looking at what their communication modalities are, how they're communicating. So if I'm observing him for 20 minutes in circle time, how many interactions, how many utterances, so to speak, are with body movement or challenging behavior or vocalization or using a picture or using natural speech or a sign approximation? So I want to do a frequency count, right, of those things to capture. Here's how he's communicating now. Because that's very important for me in deciding what his AAC tools are. If he's not using anything symbolic, right, nothing to represent concepts, right, no word approximations, no sign approximations, no representational gestures or pictures, right, that's a different set of AAC tools, right, than a kid who is already doing some signing, even if they're kind of crappy, right? Trying to say some words, using some pictures, right? Those are very different situations, right? So I want to know how they're communicating. I also want to know what's driving their communication, right? What are the purposes or the communicative intents that I'm able to observe? And so the ones that people think most about are requesting, and I love Howard Shane's term, goods and services, So often when we start AAC, we're thinking about, let's give them ways to get stuff, to get things happening. And that has a wonderful place. It's an insanely powerful thing. But I think we've overemphasized it, right? As I go around classrooms or I observe therapy sessions and I see wonderful little snack activities where kids are able to tell how many goldfish they want and how much juice they want, and all of those wonderful things. It's terrific, right? There's so much richness in communication for these individuals that goes beyond requesting. And I think we don't realize how motivating that is to them, right? So I'm thinking of one little guy that I worked with for a couple of years. And honest to goodness, he wasn't about the stuff, right? You could have ripped off a piece of a napkin and given it to him to play with. And if you hammed it up and made it silly and did some fun stuff back and forth with him, he would have liked that as much as the $50 light up, musical toy that I got from Amazon, right? He wasn't about getting that thing. He was about making me look ridiculous, and we forget sometimes. We focus on requesting, I think, because it's concrete for us, it's tangible for us, and it's powerful. I'm not saying we don't do that, but it's incredibly important for us to look for all the different purposes for communication. I'll never forget an experience I had with a young man with Angelman syndrome, right? And this was many years ago. And in those days, we really assumed that kids with Angelman syndrome had very significant intellectual disability and would be poor users of technology, right? And so we were doing a lot of things to build his skills around behavior regulation functions, requesting, getting attention. And we were coming back from Christmas holiday. I was running an AAC preschool, which we did for many years here. And he had, his mom had twin babies over the holiday, and they were bringing the babies in to show his class, to drop them off for the first day. And he went to every adult in that classroom, and he took them by the hand, and he took them over to each baby one by one, right? He just took us over, led us over to the baby, and put our hand on the baby. And he looked at us and smiled, and then he grabbed us and yanked us to the other parent, right, and put our hand on that baby. And he wasn't telling me he wanted anything. He was showing off, right? His sweet little baby brother and sister. And, you know how you learn those things? You know things and then you learn them at a completely different level. That was such an aha moment for me that we frequently underestimate what they are trying to do and tell us. And there's so many more things they find reinforcing. So to me, being able to capture how they're communicating, why they're communicating, and then the other thing that I want to frequency count on is their communication frequency. So if I observed them for 10 minutes and they communicated one time in 10 minutes, that's a different path forward than the kid who communicated 10 times in 10 minutes. So those three pieces help me, Lucas, in crafting my direct assessment, pieces to the process a little bit more carefully.